Failure is a decision, but it's not the last decision.
Because you're 100% right. Social media when I was 18 years old and started throwing it on the credit card or using whatever cash I had at that time and just continuously invested and got deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole of digital marketing. I just went through a failed business attempt and burned through basically all my life savings of cash.
Logan Forsyth is a digital strategist and YouTuber who works closely with creators to elevate their online presence.
Specializing in content marketing, personal branding, and content management,
he helps influencers refine their vision, grow their platforms, and connect more effectively with their audiences.
You have hired the wrong client. Over-promising, under-delivering. History has a tendency to whitewash the true reality. I think that's one of the problems of social media.
We're not doing this for fun. We're not doing this for vanity. We're doing it to grow the business.
Just keep moving forward. Motion creates opportunity.
The more time that you put towards that, if you're following the right processes, the more your overall business is going to grow. It truly is a rising tide that raises all ships. Truly, the industry does not matter much at all. It's much more about the business itself.
How do you determine what's noise versus what's the best reality for your business or client? All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Stern Talk. I'm William Stern, and of course, we've got a very exciting guest for you today. His name is Logan Forsyth, and he's from a company called Media Scaling. Logan, thanks for joining us.
Of course, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, right on, man. Well, listen, we've got a lot to get through to today, but you happen to be in a vertical that's very near and dear to my heart. Some of the companies that I invest in, I've started, we've spent hundreds of millions of dollars in digital advertising. SEO is something where I grew up doing it, right, as a practitioner. And then now, right, we're in this different age of maybe LLMO or geo. And I want to know your story because you didn't start where you are today. I know you have a business partner, Spencer, but take me through your sort of coming up in this industry, how you first started, and how you got this spark of an idea to start your own company and to go into business with your friend.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioning, a lot of your experience comes from SEO. Funny enough, that was the first program ever invested into where I got started in digital marketing. And so that's what really created my start is info products and coaching programs and what a lot of people see that they want to call scams or just not worth it, whatever the case online. I'm a huge success story of that. When I was lucky enough to be born in the generation that I was. And so I started seeing advertisements and offers like that on social media when I was 18 years old and started throwing it on the credit card or using whatever cash I had at that time and just continuously invested and got deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole of digital marketing. Started with SEO, then it went to many different failed dropshipping stores. My business partner, Spencer, who you mentioned, and we grew up together. We've been best friends since we were 10 years old. We were roommates together in college after we graduated high school, and we started our first agency together at that time. Had no idea what we were doing. And then we moved off, and it's been a full circle moment of coming back together and founding Media Scaling about 5-6 years down the road after that. But it's just been a continuous process of continuing to invest, stack up skills, go to masterminds, go to events, working 80 plus hours every single week, nonstop, and making it happen, right? And then in terms of media scaling, I'll first start with a little bit about what we do. We'll work with personal brands and businesses and guarantee 10 million to 500 million views in the first year. Otherwise, we work for free. A big part of how we've done that is by also creating what we call sub accounts on top of main accounts for the brands that we work with on each platform. And so instead of just having one Instagram account, we'll come in and sometimes we create 5 additional, and that allows us to 10x or more the posting volume. And then we're funneling that all back to the main brand and the offers. And we're seeing a huge arbitrage. I kind of compare it to running Facebook ads in 2008 or Google ads in 2001 when there were new platforms and CPMs were a tiny fraction of what they are today because there's much less competition. That's how it is with sub accounts. And we're seeing a massive arbitrage in terms of CPMs, which stands for cost per 1,000 views. Of a lot of the time, we're able to generate tens of millions of views for $1, $2 CPMs when comparatively to meta ads. Obviously, it's not apples to apples, but even so, you're looking at $70 to $150 CPMs a lot of the time, right? And so how we started media scaling was my partner, Spencer, was working internally with someone named Iman Gadzhi back in 2022. And Spencer built Iman's sub account network. Iman was really one of the first people to do it following Andrew Tate and Luke Belmar. And in the first 4 months, they generated 449 million views. And Spencer was showing me this and telling me about the results that they had gotten when he was staying with me out here in LA. And I was shocked by the number. And I just went through a failed business attempt and burned through basically all my life savings of cash. And I was ready to make a pivot at that point. And so came up with the idea of going top of market to top personal brands and guaranteeing 100 million views in the first 90 days. And that's what we did. And it was a great offer. We were one of the first to do it at that time, and broke through the noise. And immediately within the first month, we had to go out and hire 20 employees, and we're off to the races. And now since then, in about 2.5 years, we've generated over 7 billion views, 24 million followers. Our team's about 95 people right now. So it's been a very, very fun process.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so funny for the people who are going to watch this episode. They're going to sit back and they're going to hear you tell this story in 2, 3 minutes. They're going to say, all right, well, he was buying a bunch of courses and joining a bunch of masterminds, putting everything on his credit card, and then just kind of stumbled upon success, right? What we're not talking about are the failures and the setbacks and those moments of indecision, of existential crisis, of you turning to your wife or your fiance and going like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't believe they did this. I can't believe we're not getting these results. How am I going to find more clients? We're promising and, sort of over promising, under delivering. It's funny how like history has a tendency to whitewash, right, the true reality. I think that's one of the problems of social media, which is we've got,
Mhm.
Logan here, who's a, handsome young man telling this story of, yeah, I just had this idea and had this best friend and yeah, we just kind of figured it out. Now we're, a company of 100 people and delivering these amazing results. What I want to understand is, you know, entrepreneurship is like a decision tree, and failure is a decision, but it's not the last decision. I think most entrepreneurs, they understand life as this two-way door, meaning that I can take a step forward, and if it's not the right decision, I can actually go backwards and just find a different way. We talk about like a decision tree. But so I think what people want to understand is, I mean, it was a great intro because I mean, you found and you've stumbled upon some amazing success. But I want to understand like what the failures and the setbacks were. You talked a little bit about it with like failed drop shipping and stuff like that, putting stuff on credit cards. But what you didn't talk about are the seemingly like simplistic aspects of how you built the funnels, how you found clients, right? So if you don't mind, rewind the tape back just a little bit and some of the play back some of those memories that you kind of wish you didn't have to work through, right? That you in life, when you talk about your success, you kind of skip through, right? The hurdles and the missteps because you're so excited to talk about the progress you're seeing. But I think people want to understand the hardships also. Right? It helps people relate. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. I really appreciate that question and going down the route because you're 100% right. I started with an advantage in the sense that my mom was very smart and she added me to her credit accounts when I turned 16 years old. So by the time I was 18, I already had great credit because my mom was paying off her credit cards, and that allowed me to have about $10,000 of a line of credit with some credit cards by the time I was 18. And then I began credit stacking after that as well. So that's what allowed me to make my first investments into courses and masterminds. And for about 3 to 4 years, I had a rotating, give or take the time, 10 to 15,000 in credit card debt. And I would find credit cards that had 0% interest for 12 to 15 months. And as soon as it started to get towards the end of that, I would go and apply for a new credit card that also had 0% interest for 12 to 15 months. And then I'll just transfer it over. So I didn't get in a death trap of paying, 25+% interest on making those bets. But
Yeah.
I've always been a huge believer in, really betting on yourself and investing in yourself. and never stopping that process. And that's what allowed me to get in the game. But in terms of failures, I mean, we fail all the time. All the initial courses or programs or quote unquote businesses that I tried to start really went nowhere for a period of almost 5 years. And that's multiple marketing agencies. That's probably 12 different drop shipping stores. That was the SEO venture. I started doing online personal training for a period of time and didn't really go anywhere with that. And so I was bouncing around and finally started working for other people through the masterminds that I joined. I would look and find who is the most successful in here, right? And I'd reach out to them, get connected with them, started working with them to truly learn how they're running their business and fulfilling and marketing their services and their sales process. And that's a huge cheat code as well, because then you get paid to learn, right? And I'm a huge believer in that.
Yeah.
That's what helped me generate more experience to go back out on my own and start getting more clients with my marketing agency. And then in 2020, through mutual connections, I got connected with someone named Manny Koshman, who has a large following on socials. He's known for his car collection. He's got one-of-one Bugattis, Paganis, McLarens, and world class. He's bought and sold over 1 billion in commercial real estate using his own capital. And he was looking for someone to help him really scale up a coaching company, teaching others how to invest in commercial real estate and build their portfolios as well. And so that's what moved me from Texas to California. I had the amazing opportunity to work directly with him and build that up from employee number one to where we had about 25 people by the time that we left and had thousands of investor clients come through. So that was an incredible learning experience. And Manny's socials grew from around 3 million collectively to over 6 million collectively in the 2 years that I was there. And I helped lead a lot of the strategy and content creation process on that as well. And so that's what really put me into the space of understanding what it's like to grow and scale a large personal brand, and then also building my network in the industry. It got to the point to where I started making jokes that I knew more about commercial real estate than anyone in the world who didn't own commercial real estate. But I wanted to change that, and partnered with someone who's still a good friend today, who had over 400 million real estate experience, and we started a firm called Quantity Capital. And our timing could not have been worse. So this was July of 2022, which just so happened to be when the Fed started raising interest rates on a monthly basis every single month at faster rates than just about ever before in modern history. And so over the course of the next year, we underwrote thousands of deals, connected with hundreds of brokers, and got nowhere. We didn't even get close to a deal because the numbers wouldn't pencil out. And I burned through over 200,000 in savings between living expenses and business expenses, and still was traveling here and there. And I had my back against the wall, saying I had about 2 months of expenses left before I was completely out of cash. And that's just so happened when Spencer was at my house and was showing me what he was doing. And, a lot of the time, necessity breeds innovation. And that's what really happened with media scaling. But even with media scaling, we've had plenty of failures.
Yeah.
You make a lot of wrong hires, you make the wrong bets, you pivot and you learn like who is your true super consumer or ideal client profile. But as long as you're not scared to make those bets and you look at failures as learning opportunities rather than something that makes you completely just throw in the towel, that's really like the game of business above all else is just not stopping, right? If you just stay in the game, you stay alive long enough, you're going to put yourself in a good chance of seeing some compound growth from that consistent effort and dedication year over year over year.
Yeah. It's well put. I think you could summarize everything you just said, which is like, you just keep moving forward, right?
Right.
Motion creates opportunity. Staying at home with that sort of attitude, woe is me, when things aren't going your way, it's not going to solve the problem, right? It's not going to help you it's not going to be an impetus to that next step that you need to take. And you mentioned something interesting. You said, well, things weren't going well, and I had blown through $200,000 worth of savings. And that's when Spencer's in my living room going, hey, this is what I'm doing. And you're like, hey, a light bulb goes off. Like, maybe we should do something together. I'm curious, as an entrepreneur, and I'm going to label you as a serial entrepreneur, um, how how do you sort of differentiate? Like, what's the dichotomy in your reasoning where it's like, this is an avenue worth pursuing, and this is just noise? Like, how do you determine whether, if, you're in your media scaling business, you get a client and they're like, well, hey, I want to, build a bigger personal brand. These are the products and services my company offers. Are we in this era of founder-led brands? Do I talk about, my life and my experiences? Am I talking about the brand? Am I talking about like how the product will make somebody feel and the community that they'll feel a part of? So how do you know which road to go down? Um, and at what point are you able to make a decision and go either for yourself and your products or for giving that painful advice maybe to a client that keeps repeating the same sort of content strategy over and over again and is expecting, right, um, to have these sort of larger than life, results, but they're not. And so it's like, how do you make that determination where it's like, all right, do we keep going down this road, this avenue of potential, or do we just nip it in the bud and pivot? Like, how do you determine what's noise versus what's the best reality for your business or client?
Yeah, yeah, noise versus signal. And so when to pivot, I think the just giving the example of why I felt so strongly I needed to pivot is because commercial real estate was the first industry that I was a part of that is very dependent on what's going on in the economy and what the government is doing, much more so than marketing, right? Marketing, you can always create and spot opportunity. And I'm not saying you can't in real estate either, but real estate is extremely dependent on interest rates because to be able to have competitive returns compared to even just the S&P 500, leverage is what comes into play. And if you're trying to tackle things all cash in real estate, it's hard to consistently find opportunities and returns that are going to be competitive compared to other aspects. And so I felt like we were just running against a brick wall, and the outlook of interest rates in the economy looked like it was getting worse before it was getting better. And so I didn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. And I also did know knew that I didn't have the runway to continue to push through either, and I needed to make something happen fast. And so the second part of my answer to your question is leaning into what is your expertise, right? Like that's the biggest piece. And my expertise to that point, and still is digital marketing. And so I was able to jump back into that and create opportunity. I mean, we had the idea of media scaling in January, and by the beginning of March of 2023, I had already built out our website, our funnels. Spencer at that time was still working internally with Iman and spent about 3 months to train new leadership to take over in his position so he could move over. And then we were running financial models and projections and just getting pieces in place, getting ready to launch. But we were able to do that full process within a month and a half of idea to getting our first client and then our first two clients and then hiring a team of 20 people. And so that allowed us to move very quick. And the last thing is really looking at the growth of the market, right? If you're an emerging fast growth market, that's going to give you a massive advantage versus if you are in a flatlined market. A great analogy is Jeff Bezos had a very high paying, multi six figure job in private equity when he saw that the internet was growing at over 2000% year over year, which is crazy, right? And when he saw that statistic, he knew that he needed to figure out how to be part of the internet. And he looked at all the products out there and decided, well, books is a product that can apply to the most people and be a huge market, and also will just ride the growth of the internet in general. And he had amazing timing with that, and that played a big role in the success of Amazon. The same thing today, if you're looking to start a new venture and you have complementary skill sets, and looking at AI, it's the highest emerging growth industry right now. Or you look at the amount of money that was made in crypto over the last 5 years, and I don't think that that's over by any means, but just the rate of it being a brand new industry to coming to maturity, you can get a lot of things right or a lot of things wrong and still become very, very rich if you spot those trends early on. And so look at your experience, and then is it a fast growth industry with a lot of growth ahead for decades to come?
No, it's an excellent answer. I guess I'm gonna press you a little bit more on this though. So just
Yeah.
going back to the whole, you said, noise versus signal. Um, in your own business, right? You're creating, it sounds like, right? You're creating organic marketing for people, right? You talked about main account, sub accounts, getting them more impressions, and having it be a strategic option versus, let's say, running meta ads, right? Like they're going to just get way more exposure. It may not be sort of, it may not be the exact audience that they're looking for, right? Because it's not as targeted, let's say, as if it was driven by, the algorithm sort of pointing the ad at someone who's expressed interest. But you're getting them overall, right? Demonstrably more exposure than I think what they could do on their own. I think it's an interesting point because so many entrepreneurs believe that they can do it themselves. It should be like, on their business card, on their gravestone. It's almost like how they introduce themselves at parties, right? I'm Billy Bob and I can do it myself.
Yeah.
And it's almost childish and it's reckless because this goes back to the whole noise versus signal. Could these entrepreneurs do what you do themselves? Yeah, they could. Is it a good investment of their time, energy, resources, and money? Or is it better to hire a company like Media Scaling that does this for a living? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So in terms of deciding if you're going to tackle something yourself as an entrepreneur versus outsource through an agency or a vendor.
Well, I think let's make it specific to your business,
Mhm.
right? It's like, you've got a lead funnel, and at the top of the lead funnel are the people who are interested. And as they go down through your funnel, right before they exit your funnel, there's this moment that they have with their own subconscious, and they're looking at your proposed bill, and they're going, "Gosh, $100,000 over the next 90 days? Couldn't I just do this myself?" So walk me through eh, walk me through how you would approach a client that is stubborn and just believes that I can do it myself, and then take it back, right, up maybe to 10,000 feet and just talk how, and speak on how an entrepreneur in any business, in any industry, right, comes to these moments where it's like, in order to grow, you have to let go. You can delegate outcomes, but not tasks. And sometimes it's just better to hire someone where this is their wheelhouse.
Got it. Yes. My favorite operating philosophy in business is more, better, new. And more comes first, better comes second, new comes third. In terms of determining should you tackle a new opportunity or a new channel or a new anything, right? Ask yourself first, well, can we just do more of what we're currently doing? If the answer is yes, then just do more, right? Secondly, if you can't do more, can you do it better? And if you can do it better, then you should just do it better. And only if you cannot do more or better should you consider doing something new, because the hardest part of anything is starting it and building it from scratch. That's where most of the learning curve is. And
Mm.
that's where most of the headache comes into play. And so I would say if you are determining, let's use the example of mediascaling.com and working with us in terms of scaling up your socials, whether it's just with your main socials or building a full network of sub accounts, it doesn't always have to be 100,000 in the first 90 days either. Then is it in your zone of expertise? Do you already have systems around this? Do you already have a lot of experience with it? Do you already have team who are experts in content? If so, then you're probably in a position to where it will be easier and more effective for you to build this internally and in-house compared to others who don't check any of those boxes, right? Or even if you have built a large following, which is a lot of our ideal clients who come to us, and they already have a content team to really build sub accounts at scale, it takes an entire team of editors and multiple social media managers and a leader to captain the ship, make sure everything's running properly and correct tracking systems. And then also just knowing, hey, what is going to work? What are the formats that are working right now, the editing styles that are working right now? And then taking those into account and asking yourself, do you really know how to do all that and navigate it well? And do you think that you can make it successful in your business within the next 3 months? And also, what is the opportunity cost of all of your focus going towards building that out, which is what it would take versus partnering with an agency or someone else who already knows how to do it. So it would take much less of your time to get it up and going, right? A lot of the time when you hire internally, I'm not saying that it's always the wrong answer. There's plenty of times when you should hire internally, but you have no guarantee at all compared to us and plenty of other agencies and many verticals will guarantee you results. Um, you have to handle all of the hiring and onboarding and training, and you create more liability for yourself and your business when bringing on new employees as well. So those are all factors that you need to take into account. And if you are not the one leading them, then someone else in your company is, right? And they have payroll, they have salary. And so you also need to allocate a portion of their salary as part of the cost of building out this new thing as well, which not a lot of people think about. Um, and so those are a lot of factors that you take into account.
Yeah. Do you ever have, do you ever encounter this where you you happen upon a potential client and it seems like there's perfect alignment between media scaling and, customer, customer X. And you go through the trials and tribulations of like the speed dating, right? And they're asking tons of great questions. You're giving them the best responses that you're capable of. And you're trying to get them comfortable with your brand and get them comfortable with the expectation, the potential result that you're trying to achieve for them. And you onboard them as a client. And then 90 days down the line, you realize that you have hired the wrong client, right?
Mhm.
Because you really like, it's not them hiring you, you are hiring them, right? And sometimes there comes into it like, there comes a time where sometimes you have to fire a client, right? Because you may be achieving the expectations that they have, but they're insatiable in their desires and they just keep moving the goalposts further and further. And it's taking up more time and resources than you think it's worth, right? And
Mhm.
they're leeching off the system. And it's essentially the wrong client. It's poor alignment. Has that ever happened to you? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. A great question. And unfortunately, it's inevitable at some level of scale in any business, right? And so having client criteria is very, very important. And you're not going to get it all right day one, but as long as you continue to take feedback from your relationships and build upon that, and then train your sales team on it as well, and make sure that they're incentivized to fall in line with those criteria and not sell people who shouldn't be sold to, then you're going to get better and better at avoiding that happening over time. In terms of an agency specifically, and this could apply to a lot of businesses, when should you fire a client is if I would say one, if they are expecting you to be Atlas and lift the entire world on your shoulders and not put in work on their part in return as well, in the sense that um, upfront in a new client relationship, we always see better results when we have stronger communication. And then we do get to the point with a lot of our clients to where after we've gone through that initial period of communication and alignment, then it becomes more hands off, just like any new thing that you start, right? You want to micromanage upfront and then you can macro manage over time as they get to the great spot.
Yeah.
And sometimes clients will come in and not engage whatsoever from the start. And that makes things more difficult. And we'll check in, we don't get fast responses or whatever, and it's just not a priority for them. And then next thing you know, you get feedback 30, 45 days later. They're like, I don't like this, this, and this. It's like, well, we weren't aware of that. And, we have tried to reach out and get that feedback. And those are things that can make a relationship more difficult. Other times, clients want you to do much more than what was determined in the scope up front. Right. And so if they want you to start tacking on X, Y, and Z and all these additional responsibilities or whatever the case, and expecting that versus wanting to have a conversation around it and seeing if it's a possibility, that can start to cause friction in the relationship. And you have to determine whether or not you, as the business owner, want to comply with that and do it for them or not, and how you're going to navigate that approach. And then also over time, we've unfortunately made some mistakes in terms of like who really is the best fit for our service. And an example would be we now have the criteria in place that if we're going to come in and build you an entire sub account network of anywhere from 25 to 40 plus additional sub accounts and have a full team around this, we have not seen consistent 100% success rates when it's a brand that's just getting started or they don't already have proven content themselves. Sometimes we've been able to make that work because we can do so much more experimenting, right? But other times we haven't been able to make it work. And a lot of the time we're only as good as our client. And so we can only work with what they provide us at the end of the day. And we can experiment as much as possible with that. But there's been instances to where we haven't been able to find those winning post types or get it off the ground. And then things are not where we want it to be in a 90-day time frame. So now we have the client criteria to where um, we will only build the sub account for a brand if they're already getting 10,000 or more views on average per post, or at least we disclose that up front. And some people still really want it because they see the value in mass experimentation. And so we'll still move forward in those instances as well. But if a client is not getting 10,000 or more views per post, then what we tend to do in that instance is we'll do things at a smaller level. So we manage their main socials first, and then maybe we create one set of sub accounts across platforms that allows us to still test 6 to 8 different post types and formats every month to first find those winning post types and find those winning formats that go viral. And then once we find that and we start creating more and more of it, then you can start to throw fuel on the fire with sub accounts and really do things at scale where you're going to get a much bigger bang for your buck. Right. So those are things that we've learned over time that we didn't know day one.
Yeah. And it sounds like you learn these lessons by working with the wrong avatars, right? Like these are
Yes.
painful lessons where you end up partnering with a company where it's like you had the best of intentions, but they either weren't willing to do the work in terms of, you know, creative content, right? And you're sort of limited in what you can do. And therefore, algorithmically, if they're not creating enough content, they're not going to get enough views, right? Somebody else, right, that's more, sort of programmatic with their cadence is just going to get more views. Why? Because, social media wants content to sell ads, right? The more diversified content that they have and the higher amount of, the more cadence that they have from that avatar, right? The more ads that they can sell. And so I think it's interesting you end up learning these lessons in real time. I think there's so many business owners that wait for confidence to sort of manifest,
Mhm.
that wait for the results to sort of appear in front of them. And I think that is a hangover from when they used to work in industry, right? So before they transition to working as an entrepreneur, they're sort of gifted results by working in close connection with other departments, right? It's sort of more, it's a more of a team effort per se. And they sort of get, their it's like working on a film when you're just the gaffer. Like, well, we won an Academy Award, but you were the gaffer, right? You held a microphone. You moved a light. In business and entrepreneurship, the confidence doesn't come from theory. It comes from action. And unfortunately, action and motion, it's not always with it's not always in the right direction. A lot of times entrepreneurs will realize that like, hey, opportunity is a ladder and I'm going to lay it against this wall and I'm going to climb that ladder and I'm going to get to the top and then I'm going to realize that I probably put my ladder against the wrong building. And that wrong building could be the wrong client or, which is interesting for media scaling, it could also be a client in the wrong industry. So I would love it if you could talk a little bit about the industries that you specialize in. Like you're in Cooperstown, right? You can have anything you want, right? Who is the ideal client avatar for media scaling?
Truly, the industry does not matter much at all. It's much more about the business itself. Who is the best fit that we really specialize in working with are high ticket businesses, whether it's high ticket products or services. That's who we specialize in. We are not as experienced or built for, low ticket ecom brands or more like low ticket consumer brands. That's not our zone of genius. High ticket is. So that's one thing that we look for. And then on top of that, we either look
So
for,
sorry, real quick. So, can I interrupt?
yeah, yeah,
I'm not
of
familiar
course.
with what high ticket necessarily means. Can you explain
Got
what
it.
that
Yeah.
means?
Okay. Yeah, I should have specified. So high ticket, I would define as selling the core offer of their product or service at $3,000 or more. Low ticket would be less than that amount. And really low ticket is a lot of e-commerce brands or software companies or whatever that they'll sell $20 to $100 products, or a term in business is LTV, lifetime value, right? And maybe they have an LTV of in the hundreds of dollars or about $1,000. A lot of software companies need to go out and raise capital because they will be unprofitable for a long time, depending on what capital is put into the business. But they know that their LTV per customer is $1,000 over the course of 2 years. And so they'll spend $300 and lose a lot of money up front, knowing that they're going to profit longer term. Those are not the businesses that we've seen the most success with, or that we're really built for. We know if we're going in and working with a business that has a high ticket service or product, $3,000 or more, a lot of the time it gets to $10,000 or more, that we're very quickly and much more confidently able to create a meaningful ROI for them that's attributed to our service. And there's plenty of them out there. And so that's our niche, right? And then the second piece of it are businesses who are actively creating content or committed to starting, one of the two, right? And if you check both of those boxes, we now have a full stack of offers that can meet you with where you're starting from, to be able to work with almost any business in those buckets that are doing $10,000 or more per month in revenue. Like that's our minimum criteria. And then we have clients that do, some of our largest enterprise clients are doing billions per year in online sales and revenue, and then everything in between. So those are the main two factors. In terms of the industries, we've worked across 60 plus industries at this point. And I will actually say, I think that quote unquote boring businesses have a bigger advantage today versus the most common industries that you see on social media. An example would be, I was talking to someone who was a farmer last week, and you don't see a lot of farmers creating content on social media, right? And just like on the farm and different equipment, and day by day, you could do some vlog style content. And there's so many interesting aspects. Everyone knows about farming and it is connected to us all. And you never see it on social media. And so there's a big opportunity to really stand out, right? And become the number one farmer on socials. Versus if you are a fitness influencer, you're competing against just a massive red ocean, right? And so you got to get a lot more creative to stand out. So I think a lot of the biggest opportunity to really quickly stand out are going to be more of those boring businesses, the types of people that you don't typically see creating content.
Give me some more ideas, because I think what you said is really interesting. In the world of private equity, which is an industry that is like near and dear to my heart that I
Yeah.
participate in.
Mhm.
There are roll-ups going on, um, that you're probably well aware of. I think it's publicized well in the media, but as our parents' generation are now retiring, right? They're in their 70s, and maybe they're looking to sort of hand over the keys of their enterprise, to to have this some sort of legacy handoff. If there is no next of kin that wants to sort of pick up and run with the ball,
Yeah.
what are they going to do with the business? And so what you're seeing are a lot of businesses get rolled up, that have these 30-year track records. It could be plumbing, it could be roofing, um, electrical. These are boring businesses. They're not capital intensive, they're labor intensive, skill intensive, but they're businesses that are seemingly, I don't want to say ostracized, but are definitely like sidelined by the technical economy, right?
Right.
AI isn't
Altruism.
necessarily affecting their business.
Mhm.
Yeah, right. It's not trending. It's not trending on social media either. So why do I bring this up? I bring this up because I don't see a whole lot of content. You mentioned farmers as like a potential, client avatar match for media scaling, but give me some other ideas, like a plumbing business, an electrical business, a roofing business that has 3 million in revenue. Is that a match for media scaling, or are they, is that too small of a business? Help me
Yeah,
understand.
1000% it's a match. Yeah, those are all, they fall more into the blue collar, physical workspace, which is more protected against AI, right? I think it's going to take a little bit of a while for robotics to catch up to a lot of that. And then also there's even just the comfort level of, let's say, a plumber, people having a robot come into their home versus a person, right? And so, and at the same time, as you mentioned, they're not trending. There's not a lot of new people starting plumbing businesses compared to if you zoom out 30, 40, 50 years ago. A lot of the legacy founders, kids or whatever the case, don't have the interest. And so I'm 100% aligned with you. And in the world, my wife's family business is in manufacturing. Manufacturing is a big one of those industries as well, to where there's not a lot of new people getting started manufacturing, especially in the US. And so the opportunity there is massive. Like if going back to the plumbing example, there are so many factors that you can talk about of, what to do if this happens with your plumbing, which by the way, every social media platform is now a search platform like Google as well. And a lot of people no longer just go straight to Google. They go to YouTube, they go to Instagram, they go to TikTok, and they'll search for problems that come up because now they get video that visually shows them how to do the thing they're searching for. More so applicable to blue collar trades like plumbing and construction and roofing and all these aspects versus search. And so it's even more effective. And a lot of the time, if you start making content strategically around a lot of these search terms in the blue collar space, you can really rank up for that, especially if you do it consistently and you do it at better levels of quality and you do it with more engineered scripting and you're testing viral hook frameworks. And that's how you can really start to stand out on socials. And so I love all of those boring businesses. And I think there's massive opportunity for it. Also in the blue collar space is very tech adverse. So I know a lot of private equity companies doing roll-ups, et cetera, will just go in and they'll find great businesses that have been here for decades, but have no tech stack, right? And no systems in place. And so you can just implement that. And that's your value add structure as part of the roll-up strategy. A big piece of that too could be incorporating socials, because the reality is most of these blue collar businesses that have been around for a few decades, they built up their quote unquote brand in the local marketplace just by primarily word of mouth and referrals is going to be the base level. A lot of them will work with a home advisor, right? And then they're all like chasing shared leads. Someone comes into home advisor, it gets dispersed to 8 roofing companies at once, and there's whoever gets them first type of deal. And that can become challenging. And so there's a huge arbitrage in being the one that builds a brand, right? And my recommendation for really starting to turn social media into a consistent, predictable marketing channel for you is step one, create content. Because it's very hard to run profitable ads today without great quality content because you have no brand. And a lot of people, they want to go to your profile and do their due diligence before they're going to follow through with your ad. And so it's backwards of trying to start with ads first. So step one is content. And you want quality content, because if you're creating bad quality content and people see your ad, they go to your profile and it's bad, they're not going to trust you and they're not going to move forward either. So if you want profitable ads and you want to be able to scale ads, that's a big piece of it. And then secondly, you can start to add ads on top of that. And you need a great sales process and a good offer stack. But that can become a massive, massive competitive edge, especially in these blue collar spaces, because not a lot of businesses have cracked the code. And there's a lot of money in the space, right? The margins are great. The LTV, like those are high ticket service businesses that we're talking about. And so it's very easy to be profitable
Yeah.
and have that be a big edge.
I love it. I want you to sort of explain to me, we've got a little bit of time left, about 10 minutes, but I really would like you to sort of explain to me how difficult the conversation is, um, where let's say one of these boring businesses happens to slip into your funnel and your sales folks at media scaling are talking to them and they're sort of explaining this strategy, right? Of social media domination, of building, of building and promoting and really creating this enterprise level brand on social media. But and what you're promising, right, in terms of views is an amazing offer. And for them, it must all sound like, unicorns and rainbows up until the point where you lay it on them and you're like, but you got to create the content.
Mhm.
And they're like, what? They're like, I'm a plumber. I do drywall.
Yeah.
I do I pour concrete. Like, what do you mean I have to make content? And you're like, yeah, that's the whole deal. So talk me through how you explain that to them, right? These are specialty contractors, and now we're asking them to become, or if not become, at least balance being an entrepreneur and also being an actor,
Mhm.
right? And I use the word actor sort of in quotations, but if there's a script and there's a hook, I mean,
Right. Yeah.
these are right. These are like fundamental aspects of acting. Um, But talk to me about how you explain that to them, and is that a big detractor? Do people say, "Well, what you're offering, Logan," or, you're talking to your sales team, but, what you're saying, media scaling, sounds awesome. And these are the results I want. And I understand the value and I want consistent and predictable leads. But I can't make this content. I don't have a team of videographers and this sounds overwhelming. Talk me through that.
Yeah, definitely. Um, that's not our job on the sales process, right? Like people don't, by the time that they're on a sales call, we'd have plastered it everywhere in our marketing, our VSLs, our X, Y, and Z, our sales automations, letting them know like, hey, this is who this is a fit for, and this is who it's not a fit for. And a lot of it is telling them like, this is for people who are actually creating content or committed to starting throughout the entire process. And so, does it never happen? No, but our job on the sales call is not typically to first sell someone on why they should create content, right? Typically, we filtered things down and gotten our marketing in a place to where they're coming to us. They already know why they should be creating content, and they're just looking at who's the best team to work with and how can they do it better. But in terms of that conversation that I would have, we do create front end content around this as well. And I've had plenty of conversations. A big piece of it is understanding that it truly is one of the highest leverage things that you can do for your business, right? The more time that you put towards that, if you're following the right processes, the more your overall business is going to grow. It truly is a rising tide that raises all ships. Additionally, it does not have to take nearly as much time as people think. A lot of our businesses who come to us when we're just, because this is an instance to where you'd basically be building the brand from the ground up, right? Like they're just getting started. And so anytime that we're working with a business where that's the case, we're able to script things out for them to where by the time that you receive the scripts or the outline, it'll take you less than 2 hours per month to film all the content. You can do it in one day, in one filming session. Let's say your target is 30 videos, short form per month, right? If you have the full scripts and outlines prepared for that, you can knock that out in a 2, 3 hour filming session and you're done for the month. And that can make it very easy and sustainable for business owners who are open to that. But I know the persona of plumbers and roofers and HVAC technicians. I know the space, and I know a lot of them. They're tech adverse, and they're very adverse to that. And if you bring up the word active, they're going to run the other way, right? And so it's not that. It's more so just the building your business. But at the same time, last there's two more options. One is people are consistently surprised at how open and willing and exciting some of their team members are to be able to film content for the business, right? And so a lot of the time, if you as the owner don't want to do it, that's totally fine, but you need someone to do it, right? Personality is required. It's very hard. You're going to have much less success on social media trying to build a brand without personality and do it faceless versus if you have personality. But it doesn't always have to be the founder, right? And so my next step is I would go and see, hey, is there anyone on the team who kind of has a knack for this? They already, if you go on their personal social media profiles, they're already creating content all the time. They just like to do it. And if so, like offer them the opportunity, and tons of people would jump at it. Worst case scenario, you offer them a quote unquote promotion and you pay them extra $500 a month and they'll happily do it for you. Right. And then the last case is there's now a marketplace of UGC creators, which stands for user generated content, or influencers who would do it for you. And this is their profession, creating content. Right. And so it's basically hiring an actor for your brand. It's hiring a flow from the insurance brand. I'm blanking on it. But it's hiring that mascot for your brand to create content for you. The biggest thing is they need to look like your persona. A little recently, I connected with an HVAC company that is based in Arkansas, and they supply to a pretty large market throughout Arkansas, but it's mainly Southern Arkansas, right? And so you want the people who are creating content for your brand to just be like everyone else in Southern Arkansas. You want them to have the accent. You want to call them out specifically and be like Arkansas residents and your town residents. If you do that in your content, you're going to rank for those search terms. You're going to own the search because almost no local businesses do it. And additionally, the organic algorithm is the same algorithm for advertising, right? That has trillions of data points on all of us. And today on socials, especially with short form content, it gets served a lot to non-followers that are also targeted based on their interests and demographics. So if you're a plumber and you're calling out your local area and your content, the platform is way smart enough to be able to then know to serve that to your local area because they know that that's who's going to be interested in seeing your content. And so you do pick up a lot of that same type of quote unquote ad targeting, if you will, from making that a part of the strategy. And then you're also incorporating keywords of your local area and towns and the counties that you're a part of in your captions and in the username of your accounts and the bio of your accounts. And that's all training the platform of who to serve your content to as well. So there's always ways to get creative, but those are going to be the top three.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's good to know that you've had these problems, you've worked through them, and that you have a strategy. Because I think to the viewers out there, whether they're roofers or drywallers, electricians or plumbers, right? You described them as boring businesses, which I think is like the best way to describe them. They would describe them as like the most interesting businesses, but
Right.
they're
They love,
boring
yeah,
businesses to acquire, right?
yeah,
And they're boring because, believe it or not, they're predictable. You can predict their revenue,
right,
right? Based off of how many trucks they have and how many technicians they have. And I think the one sort of drawback to these boring businesses is that they don't have, and I think you made great mention to this, they don't have the consistent and predictable marketing. You made this great call out. You're like, well, they use Home Advisor, right? And they think, well, that'll provide us with enough leads. And I'm not like poo-pooing Home Advisor or Angie's or any one of these other like lead aggregation sites, but you pointed out the sort of inherent flaw with these lead aggregation websites, which is that 10 other companies are going to get the same lead. And it's who jumps on the lead first. And if you're a one-man shop or a three-man shop, it doesn't really matter. Your lead sort of your the rate at which you're able to hop on that lead and make outreach, meaningful outreach, determines whether or not you have the best chance of capturing that lead.
yeah,
And like you said, these are high ticket industries, right? They're replacing um, a leaky pipe, or they have a water heater that needs to be
right.
replaced. These aren't small jobs. They're meaningful jobs. Those leads are expensive. And I think, for those, especially contractors, especially that are watching, the one part of your plan that generations before you have never gotten right. It's like, well, we just do a good job. Our pricing is fair. We show up when we're going to show up, and there's no haggle, right? You understand what the price is going to be before we start the job, and we get the job done right. You're like, great. But in a world of commoditization, right? There needs to be a way for your business to grow and thrive. And I think that's through consistent, you mentioned this, right? It's through consistent and predictable lead flow. I think that's what media scaling, um, I think that's where you guys really shine, because this isn't a business of self-promotion, right?
Mhm.
This is a
Yeah.
business of calculated content creation that leads to, consistent and predictable lead flow. So I want to thank you so much for joining us, for being on the program. How can people get in touch with you or your business? How can they find you? How can they find media scaling?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that we're at the wrap up point, but if I can quickly add to what you just mentioned as well, all the platforms also share data together. And so if people are searching for plumber in this area on Google, Google and Meta and the other platforms, they share data. And so the Instagram and TikTok and X, Y, and Z are able to pick that up and then also serve you content based on your search on other platforms. And so you're still picking up on that search traffic and that intent traffic, right? And if you're a business that's been able to actually grow with Angie's List or Home Advisor, you are going to kill when you build your own brand because you already have developed a great sales process and speed to lead and knowing how to communicate and the systems around it. And so if you apply that to your own exclusive leads, right, you're just going to crush and you're going to take over and it's going to be a huge edge for you. So I just wanted to throw it out there as the last point. But this is the same thing. We're not doing this for fun. We're not doing this for vanity. We're doing it to grow the business. This is like running radio ads back in the day, or newspaper ads, or yellow pages. This is the new form of that, and this is the biggest arbitrage to pick up on the most business growth for the least amount of capital, and therefore create the most profit when it comes to marketing today. Truly, like we're in the space, we see it all. So that's why we do what we do. But yeah, this was awesome. Really enjoyed the conversation. And then mediascaling.com is where you can find us. And we have plenty of free resources, courses on there as well. I put out a lot of free content going over this stuff in more detail on YouTube at Logan Forsyth. And then you can find me on all other socials of your choice at Logan Forsyth as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Logan, for being a guest on the Stern Talk. I'm super excited to check in with you. Stay in touch. I want to see where the business grows to. I think we're at this amazing point where AI and social media have the power to catapult a sort of relatively unknown business into stardom almost overnight. But like you made mention, it takes consistent, right, content creation. This is not like a do minimum and have these, wild expectations of what it's going to produce. And so I'm really interested to see sort of where media scaling gets to in the next year, 2 years, and beyond. I think if you're a business that matches the client avatars that Logan talked about, you got to reach out to him, right? Mediascaling.com, or Logan Forsyth on YouTube. Thanks for being a guest. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. This is awesome.
Cool. Right on.